It may not seem like an obvious destination in a series about global retail and consumerism, but this week I've come to Libya to find out how a country, which has been an international pariah for so long, is now going about rebranding itself as a modern trading nation. The first time I came to Libya was 1999. The sanctions had just been lifted. There was a slow but steady trickle of entrepreneurs coming into this country to seek new opportunities, and there was no mobile phone network. Aside from this feeling of complete isolation, the most striking thing about the place was the complete and utter absence of global mega brands. And for an international airport, you could say it's still rather barren. A handful of years on, will my impressions of Libya be any different? My last visit, which was rather unofficial, was without a camera crew. I was writing for my magazine wallpaper. But coming here now to film a documentary is still extremely unusual. This is a country that is unaccustomed to the presence of foreign media, perhaps media in general. There are no major foreign news bureaus in Tripoli, and commercial advertising has only recently been legalized. It hasn't changed as much as I thought it would have, actually. I was expecting this stretch of road in from the airport to be literally owned by the Koreans, that we'd have LG and Samsung and Daewoo everywhere, but there's no threat to Mr. Gaddafi losing his billboard or poster space, and he appears about every kilometer or so along the stretch. There's something actually quite charming about this, because this is probably one of the few roadways in a major city on the Mediterranean which is not owned by mega brands still. The mega brand here is the leader and his now 36-year-old Green Revolution. It's a revolution that is celebrated everywhere in paint, green paint. Forget the red flag, red square. Here, green is it. Green square, green flags, green shop fronts, even green shopping baskets. But is brand Libya, with its uniformity, its attention to detail, what I would call its corporate control freakery, misinterpreted by the outside world?
Libya is unique. Libya is unique because of many factors. Even if you look at it historically in every sense, Libya hasn't been really copying any other model. So we are very different from Egypt. We are very different from Tunisia. We are very different from the Gulf. I like to say that we are a league of our own.
Well, this is the Socialist People's Libyan Arab Jamahiriya, or Libya for short. You've got Tunisia, Algeria and Morocco off to the west, and of course Egypt and the balance of the Arab world to the east. But what's really interesting about this place is that it's quite literally sitting on Europe's doorstep, with Greece, Malta and of course Italy and the wider European world right up to the north. 90% of the population is living along the coast, and there's roughly about 5 million people here. But what's really interesting is that this country recently implemented a series of economic reforms, which means its tent is now open for business. Tony Blair's visit in 2004 with that extraordinary meeting in a tent signaled that Libya is now open for business. Sanctions were lifted in '99, the Lockerbie case settled. Libya renounced its weapons of mass destruction in 2003, and the big foreign oil companies are back and competing for licenses to explore. As well as plans to privatize hundreds of state-owned enterprises, laws restricting advertising have also recently been reformed. As yet, no big global agencies are on the scene, but a new generation of homegrown entrepreneurs like Moawiya Magour are turning their hand to this embryonic advertising scene. Could you tell us what the media scene is like here? What do people have at their disposal? And I'm talking about the average Libyan in terms of television.
Yeah. Printing is very popular till the moment. Plus we do have 2 channels, the Libyan Corporation and the Nadi channel, it's a sports channels. We have newspapers, lifestyle magazines, and we have lots of websites coming up. Libya Online, we have Libyan Yellow Pages, Libico.com. It's very popular to have.
It's interesting because if I look at, let's say, if you jump across the Mediterranean to let's say Beirut, and you've got young Lebanese who've really grown up with tons of magazines, and obviously a very, very vibrant magazine culture. Here you've got a young generation who haven't grown up with all of these different titles. Do you think that they're going to go straight to websites and maybe they don't care so much about magazines?
No, they care about magazines, but I don't know. We didn't see any magazines coming up past years, but I think we will have some new young lifestyles magazines.
This billboard over here, when I came here in '99, I didn't see any of those. Is that?
No, there was no.
It's a new innovation.
Yeah, it is. It's been there for 3 years, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Who's controlling where they go, and who's actually sort of giving a license to say, look, we can have that billboard right there? I mean, do you see it's going to be a bit of a free-for-all, or is it controlled?
It's, let's say it's free-for-all. You can put your advert wherever you want if you have the money for that.
Right.
Yeah.
And on the international side, I mean, who's really pushing to come into this country right now?
I think everybody.
Really?
Yeah. Telecommunication, motors, We have, for example, we have BMW now and Nokia. This is our main clients.
The big question that interests me, and I'm quite sure preoccupies the minds of the people in charge of Libya and its future, is how the country will cope when those media barbarians, the big brands, and their delivery channels push down the doors and flood in. Make no mistake, 5-10 years down the line, the present brand-free Libya will be unrecognizable. Having traveled down many high streets for this series, I think Libya should treasure the culture of small business that makes its towns unique. This laboratory for the non-brand should think twice before it takes the plunge. Well, this is the real deal, and Libya's got the luxury of perspective because it can look across the region to Dubai and hopefully avoid some of the mistakes of making this place a bit too sanitized as development continues. The flip side, too, is that it is wonderful because it is crumbling, and there's a real vibrancy in street life in this country which you can never buy or manufacture, and hopefully this can be preserved. It's partly the fantastic social and racial mix that makes Libya such an exciting place to visit. You can buy gold from a Tripolitanian or shirts from a tailor from Chad.
Dans le champ, dans le jardin, quoi. Il y a des travailleurs des éleveurs qui viennent des en dehors des Trablus, quoi. Ils viennent pour nous acheter. Ça nous plaît, oui, comme notre deuxième pays. On n'a pas de problème avec nos frères libyens.
In a globalized world, there ought to be a place for the one-off and the unique. How much is...
This is about 80 dinar.
80 dinar.
Yes, and we have this one is imitation.
Right.
China.
Yeah.
Imitation.
It's plastic.
Yeah. All is really stones. Yeah.
This is national branding at its best. Libyan in-car air fresheners. You can have pine-scented, or you can have lemon-scented. I think there's a huge market for these. Libya's history is strewn with warnings about what happens when change occurs suddenly, not smoothly. 7 hours drive southwest of Tripoli into the Sahara, you can find a reminder of what happens to places when the retail market environment changes dramatically. The ancient, now deserted city of Ghadames is an extraordinary monument to trade. A UNESCO World Heritage Site, its crumbling beauty pays tribute to its past glories as a major trading center, a crossroads in the desert.
كان المكان مدينة غدامس هذه كأنها بيضة يعني دحية في وسط عشب الأخضر يعني الحزام الأخضر مع المدينة بيضة في وسطها تبان لك كأن حاجة بيضة محطوطة في وسط مزرعة لافين عليها النخيل وكانت حلوة وجيدة وساكنين ومهتمين بها المدينة القديمة في المناسبات 3-4 مرات في صيانة البيت الواحد.
For 4,000 years, this place was as vibrant and lively as Tripoli's Medina is today. But with the end of major trans-Saharan trade and the establishment of new towns along the route, Ghadames soon died, and in spite of its World Heritage status, it is still to reinvent itself as a big league tourist spot.
عدة أنواع تجارة داخل مدينة أغدامس. التجارة من أفريقيا من الشمال إلى الجنوب، من أفريقيا إلى أوروبا أو الدول العربية في الشمال، من الجنوب إلى الشمال. تأتي البضاعة من الشمال للجنوب ومن الجنوب للشمال عكس. والحاجات اللي الاستراتيجية اللي هي الجلود والنحاس وريش النعام والذهب وعدة حاجات، يعني هذه حاجات رئيسية. واستمرت مدينة أغدامس من كثرة تجارة الجلود من الجنوب للشمال حتى سميت مدينة الجلود في سنوات يعني.
We're all one family, like aunts and uncles. It's more like a family trip, not for a holy relation or something like that. We're just interested to see Agadamis. We like it. Honestly, I feel proud. I'm a Libyan to see something like this. I haven't seen something around the world before like Agadamis, so when I come here and I see people like you come from around the world, so I feel so proud.
Still, I'd hate the same fate to befall Tripoli's Old Town. It's not just in the Sahara that Libya's history provides the template for the kind of trade and commerce that modern Libyans seem to do best. Just putting things into context, the relationship that this country has historically to the region and perhaps the immediate Mediterranean basin.
Libya is a very large country that harbors a tremendous richness in cultural property and cultural heritage. We have more Roman and more Greek sites than the actual Romans and the Greeks.
Libya possesses some of the greatest Roman sites in the world. The Mediterranean city of Leptis Magna, just an hour along the coast from Tripoli, is still a remarkably modern blueprint to build on.
We will always have played a major role between the north and south as traders and middlemen. And that's the role we excelled throughout history. And so that's what I told my superiors, and we cannot compete with textiles with China, for instance, or we cannot compete with electronics with Japan. Well, this is inconceivable. But we can be in a better position as middlemen between Sub-Saharan Africa and Europe, and between East and West.
Where exactly Libya sits in the world, where its main allegiances lie, are questions that still puzzle outsiders.
We are a small economy after all. We are not the big economy that many people believe, Libyans or non-Libyans believe it to be. We are not the gate to Africa that we tend to portray ourselves. London is nearer to us than N'Djamena, air miles wise. So at least to load from here to North Europe or to the UK, there is a sea of water. To load from here to N'Djamena, there is a sea of sand.
Is it an explosion in Libya at the moment, or are you on a gradual, controlled slope? Where are we right now in Libya?
I think Libya is really evolving rather than exploding. The chemistry around its economic and economic policies are not really allowing it to explode. In the past, the private sector was really competing with the government at two different gear levels. Nowadays, there is only one gear, whether this is private or public. They are competing on equal level.
Global politics have put Libya in play again, and the effects are visible on the streets and in the shops.
We passed through 10 years of sanction. No flying. People, they traveled by cars around from east to west, Egypt or Tunisia. And we suffered a lot, really. And now we are open to the world. And I think we are friends with British. This is the latest speech of Gaddafi. He said, my best friend is Blair, whether you like him or not, but depends.
Socialism and sanctions put the brakes on the retail sector here, but the last 18 months have seen stunning change. As well as bustling, well-stocked markets and small shops, Libya is beginning to introduce supermarkets and the occasional department store. But shopping here is still a very sociable activity, an opportunity to meet friends. The alienation of the hypermarket or mall shopping hasn't arrived here yet.
السوق هذا أجمل ما فيه، موجود فيه بضاعة، طلباتي موجودة. طبعا كل ما زاد الاقتصاد وحتى صرت الحالة بدا بيه الواحد أرقى وأفضل. وهنا أصحابي كلهم أصحابي، طالما أنا ليبي كلهم أصحابي.
So far, though, the popularity of supermarkets hasn't dented small retail business. In fact, it's booming. Carl Reuter is a Tripoli-based diplomat who heads up the British Council here.
What I've seen is the emergence of a vibrant, ground-up, organically growing private sector, which manifests itself by what you see on the streets, all these little shops that open and close. There's a kind of turnover of businesses, there's new businesses coming along, businesses with things in the shops that you never saw when you first got here, and it's exciting and fizzing and bubbling.
Is this new culture of the shopkeeper truly organic? And would you say that one week they might be running a crepe shop, the next week they decide it's not working and they're selling Belgian chocolates?
Yeah, I don't think they're actually planning that far ahead. I think what they're actually doing is setting up a crepe shop and then seeing how it works and having a very realistic view of whether it's got potential. And they fly it as a kite, and if it's not reaching a couple of 100 feet very quickly, they'll think of something else. And you've hit the nail on the head when you talk about the family, because what's actually happening is that all of these new little micro-enterprises are opening with minimal capital. I mean, with no credit facilities, no collateral to borrow against. It's little pockets of money kept in Tupperwares in somebody's kitchen. And there may be 40, 50, 60 people from an extended family who are invested. No structures, no agreements, no paperwork. It's all done on a handshake. It's all done on family honor. And if it flies, it flies. If it doesn't fly, it doesn't fly. Then I'll try something else.
Yeah, the way of buying is different. If you like something, you buy a lot. That's different. You don't really look for the extreme quality, but you like the quantity. Big houses, and big roads, big everything. Here in Libya, we buy bread by 20, or the minimum is 5 loaves of bread. If, for instance, in England or in France, they see somebody coming out of a bakery with 20 pieces of bread, they would say, oh, they're starving, or they have a huge family or something like this. So, yeah, the view is different.
Excuse me, sir, I'm just a little intrigued. Why do Libyans buy so much bread? Because every store we go into, everyone's got at least 5 bags of bread.
I know it's in my case, it's for 2 families,
2 families?
Yes, my father's house and my own family,
Do you think Libyans are going to continue shopping like this, going to individual stores as opposed to going to, let's say, a big supermarket? Do you think this tradition continues?
Yes, it will be, yeah. It cannot be changed in the near future, because people like it, and they get to the bakery every day, to buy bread for their meal.
The really interesting thing about the Libyan consumer experience is that while the north side of the Mediterranean might be under threat of being dominated by a clutch full of brands, small business is actually just blooming in this country, and I don't think that we're going to see Walmarts or Tesco's or any big brands here anytime soon. I don't want to say it's a good thing, but what the hell, I will anyway. The abundance of fresh, unprocessed food here is striking, and the variety of what's on sale is evidence of Libya's retail vitality. As well as everyday shopping here, there's the odd luxury item too, like this Belgian chocolate store run by Ibtisham Benamir.
I introduced this in the market here, because people used to buy chocolates just in the supermarket over the counter, and it is not wrapped specially or anything, so people love this, and I'm happy that they do. They come and buy for special occasions all the time. We were always able to buy chocolates in Libya, I mean, even during hard times. But this is a different line, because it is mainly about the elegance of a present you are giving, or the elegance of sharing a nice chocolate in special occasions. With things opening and improving, I think people tend to spoil themselves a little bit.
The Haroun family run the only department store in the city. They started off with a stall in the old souk.
This style of sauce is very successful because Libyan people are changing by time, and especially youth people are changing, and they like modern things. But the old people are still stick to traditions, and they are deep in tradition.
One of the other new things Libyans are being encouraged to try for the first time is to invest in a newly established stock exchange. This is perestroika, Libyan style. It's a small, dramatic sign that the Libyan people's Jamahiriya is adapting to the future. But will Libyans, and it's only open to Libyans so far, have enough confidence to put their money here rather than in Tupperware boxes?
أبرز التحديات هو أن موضوع سوق الأوراق المالية حديث العهد بالاقتصاد الليبي، وبالتالي يحتاج الأمر إلى التوعية، برنامج توعية كبير. أيضا هناك تحديات تتمثل في عدم وجود الخبرات اللازمة التي تعمل على إنشاء سوق الأوراق المالية. الضمانات الأساسية هي الثقة في الاقتصاد الوطني، وهذه الحمد لله متوفرة وموجودة، فاقتصادنا جيد وينمو، وتوقعات أنه سيكون اقتصاد مزدهر في الفترة القادمة. على الاستثمارات، هذه كلها ستجعل الاقتصاد الليبي اقتصاد قوي، اقتصاد نامي، وهذا ما أبداه كثير من المستثمرين الأجانب من ثقتهم أنه سيكون هناك اقتصاد ليبي فاعل وقوي جدا، وبالتالي سيطمئن كل من يستثمر في الأوراق المالية بأنه سيكون في أمان، بالإضافة إلى الجوانب التشريعية والقانونية والتنظيمية اللي لابد أن تكون متواجدة في أي سوق للأوراق المالية.
If Libya does get the new investment it's after, how will the outward face of the country change? Will it go the way of the Emirates? Will architects from around the world vie for Libyan real estate on which to build their skyscrapers?
What worries me most is, I would call it the invasion of the investors to the country, because they have different perception of what we have in terms of architectural heritage. We are a big museum, actually. Dubai, I think, they have managed a new image for their cities, but frankly speaking, I was a bit shocked because of the boom of these skyscrapers. It does not happen in Frankfurt, it does not happen in London, it does not happen in Paris, in any other Western big cities. Now, what I'm trying to say is the same story was happening in London and Paris. I think we have it in Tripoli.
If many of this country's classical wonders have been forgotten, it's perhaps truer to say that this nation's modernist masterpieces are pretty much undiscovered. For lovers of architectural modernism, Tripoli could be the next Brasilia. Colonel Al-Madawi is one of the original group of colonels who took part in the revolution. Now he runs an independent art foundation, the Art House in Tripoli.
We know a lot about the West, but the West, they don't know us. That's why they are doing a lot of mistakes with us. If they understand that we are a nation trying to build ourselves and to protect our history with our own image. We don't have to follow anybody. We have the history, we have the past, and we believe we have the future. A nation with history, nobody can order. A lot of people talking about democracy. Some of them, they got it 400 years ago. We have democracy since thousands of years ago. How? The teacher, they want him to be a student. We have our own culture. We have our own way of life. We need the people to understand us, understand our culture. Let us talk people to people.
One of the most extraordinary episodes that I've come across in this series was the invitation to a former palace on a rainy evening in Tripoli. The event, an impromptu fashion show, could have given even John Galliano a few pointers. It'd be great if you tell me, we've got these girls coming down, what we're going to see here. What is the significance of these costumes?
Okay, مدينة طرابلس.
And maybe give me some background about this, if you could explain about what we're seeing here.
عروس العصر الحالي مدينة طرابلس. لبسة تتكون من رداء حرير متكامل بالفضة مع القمجة فضة كاملة مع الخناق ربع الدنيا، الخناق الصغير، الخلال، السوار، الشناقيل، الشمبير، الخراس. لبسة العصر الحالي لمدينة طرابلس.
I'd be keen to know, as young Libyan women, do you think that there's more or less of a desire to embrace traditional dress in this country compared to Tunisia or Egypt or Algeria?
نلبس هيك بس هذا لبسنا ما استغنوش عليه في نفس الوقت. نلبسه في الشارع، اوكي، في الشغل، في الخدمة، نلبسه لبس عادي، بس هذا لبسنا نلبسه فيه في العراس، في المناسبات، نعتز به.
I'm quite curious to see what becomes of this place. Does Libya one day turn into Dubai on the Mediterranean? Does it become a member of the European Union? Or does much of it pretty much stay the same as it is at the moment? I think it's rather charming to be at an international airport and still see available advertising space. If Libya does reposition itself, perhaps it should be the world's most under-branded nation.
We are traders by nature. Left to trade, probably we can do a lot, but in a very conservative and smooth growing way, no explosions expected.
This country is living on a sea of oil and gas. It has huge wealth under the soil. As the world's, as the oil economy starts to stutter because oil becomes less and less economical to transport and to process, this country's got gas. Now, as the 70, 80, $100 billion a year of revenues from fossil fuels come into this country, well, of course it's going to pervade society. Of course the investment's going to be there. And in my view, I'll be able to come back to this place in 20 years and see another Dubai. I don't see any reason why not.
Well, I've got the T-shirt, I've got the pin, and now I'm off to the States. Sanctions might have been lifted, but there's still no direct flights to the United States. Wish me luck with US immigration.